Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Will with the Padawan Pops YouTube channel and my friend Kevin, and it's the second episode of the Force with Friends podcast, and this week we have a lot of Ahsoka to break down. So the first two episodes dropped this Tuesday. I thought they were awesome. I have a video just of my initial reactions, but I'm going to expand a little bit more here. But Kevin, what was your initial reaction to the first two episodes?
Yeah, I loved it. It was a lot of what you talked about in your video. It was super exciting. You got a lot of lightsaber action, a lot of really cool stuff. I was really pleased with how lore heavy it was, that it just kind of jumped right in. And, I wasn't sure if they were going to do a whole lot of back exposition to try to bring in people who maybe weren't familiar, but no, I mean, they really just jumped in and went with it. So it was fun to just kind of get going. And I loved it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I thought it was great that it had an opening scroll too. I think I just completely overlooked that when I was recording my initial reaction because, like you said, they didn't give any fluff. We just jumped right in. So even the opening scroll crawl made it just set the theme for, hey, we've got a lot going on here.
Yep.
For sure. So my first impression is just throwing a little bit out there. I liked that it was a direct continuation of Rebels. So we watched all of season 4 Monday and Tuesday after work. We were making sure that we were completely caught up there. And I watched the epilogue of Rebels 5 minutes before we started Ahsoka.
Nice.
So that was, I thought, a good touch because as you watch the episode, either the first or second, I guess it was the second episode, picks up with the Rebels epilogue, right? Or at some point it was in there.
Yeah.
Where Sabine is looking at the mural.
The mural. So, that was like right towards the very end.
Yeah, the end of the second episode, maybe. So that was cool to see that. I loved how it tied right in, but also it fits well in the Mandalorian timeline too, with Morgan Elsbeth there. And you already know a little bit about the New Republic through the Mandalorian, and they've hinted at Thrawn. So if you're just watching the Mandalorian and knew nothing about Rebels, you could hop right in and enjoy it too. So I thought that was pretty cool that they molded it to both fan bases, because the Rebels fans, like, that's us. We knew it was going to be great either way, but we're probably the minority as far as Star Wars fans as a whole goes. So I thought that was a really good job by Dave to just tie it all into those two episodes so everybody could enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's pretty smart too, because Mandalorian was kind of the entry point. It was an easy entry point for a lot of people. So a lot of people watched Mandalorian. Not as many people watched Andor, right? It was a little bit more complicated of a show, but you got all these Mando people who they jumped on. It was super easy to get into. So it was smart to tie them together that way to hopefully make it a little easier for some other people to buy in. Like you said, aren't just waiting on a Rebels sequel.
Yeah, and I think this show is going to be so easy to get buy-in on too, because a lot of action. Stringing the suspense along. Even the first, I don't know about you, but the first two episodes felt very cinematic to me. Like, it was almost like I was watching the first episode of some movie, a short movie, but still it didn't seem like a TV show, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, totally. I thought from your video the other night, I feel like they had to have had a higher budget for their effects.
Yeah, I still need to look that up.
It looked great. I mean, I'm assuming they're back in the what do they call the big giant screen?
It's not the Void. That's
eluding me right
it's
now.
It's something though. Like,
I know Andor was filmed on location at places and it looked amazing. But I mean, even with assuming that's what they're filming this, it looked great. Yeah,
the volume.
You go. Yeah. Volume. Thank you.
I was thinking the Void, but that's a virtual reality attraction that used to be at Disney. But no, the Volume. Yeah, it looked very good. Like, and it wasn't just like there was a wide variety of shots for them to take. Like, they were on that planet that was really dark, in the woods. Then they have Lothal at night, Lothal during the day. We go to the Corellia. I mean, that was
cool. Going back to Corellia, that was fun.
There was a lot of scenery to look at. And it all looked very good. The planet with the tombs that Ahsoka went to or whatever, it was a pretty 2 episodes. So I agree there. So the way we're going to break down this episode, because we do have 2 episodes, there's a lot to talk about and we want to keep it within a time frame that people want to listen. We could ramble for hours. But very simple, what we liked, what we didn't like, and where we think we're going next. So that's going to be the breakdown. So we'll start with what we did like. I imagine this is going to be the great majority of the show. I don't have many things that I did not like.
Yeah.
As far as what we did like, you want to start us off?
Yeah, no, same. Like I could talk about most of the show in terms of what I did like, but I think I really appreciated how great all the characters were. You made a point about it in your other video, but just how like villainous our group, that group of 4 seems.
Yeah,
I didn't think of Morgan as that big of a villain in Mando, but like here in this show, like I feel like they definitely got her right. Like she feels very nefarious. Then I love Baylan and his group. I think they it's just a really good group that you feel like that they can cause a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're getting some proper villains, which is fun. But then, Sabine and Hera and Ahsoka, I thought the characters were just, I liked the way they were written. I thought Sabine especially was like true to form from the show, just kind of her, rebuff against authority and sarcastic nature. And then you mentioned Chopper in your other video. Chopper was fun.
Yeah.
That was like watching a scene straight out of Rebels. So, but no, I think they got the characters right. I like the tension between Ahsoka and Sabine right now. Obviously, something's not right. Right, something went down between the two of them. So I'll be curious to see what really led to their kind of fallout. But I've really enjoyed the characters in the show so far.
For sure, I agree there. I think they did a great job casting everyone too. Like, because when they do these casting calls and you see the people and they're just like normal people on the red carpet or whatever, you're like, well, how's that going to be Hera? How is she going to fit in as Sabine? Because I'm not as far as Hollywood actors go, I'm not a huge into movies and things like that. So I don't know other people's projects for the most part. Some actors that I really like, I know more of. But man, they all did excellent as far as filling in the role. Hera was still very much in charge. Her style of nonchalant leadership, but still very much in charge. I loved that.
Very
like
motherly.
You said. Yeah, for sure. Sabine, I mean, she nailed it as far as, her and Ezra very similar as far as hard-headed, stubborn, things like that. So she did excellent there. We know Ahsoka, Rosario does amazing with her. But yeah, back to the bad guys. That was probably the thing I enjoyed most outside of seeing the Rebels characters again. They do seem like they are bad. Like this in the master apprentice deal where it's a nice mirroring picture where you've got good and bad with a master and apprentice. So you see where the show's going. Like we're going to follow Shin and Baylan and how she grows maybe as an apprentice. And then we're going to see the same with Ahsoka and Sabine. So I'm excited to see that main portion of the storyline.
I thought too, if you were familiar with the characters, Ahsoka and Sabine especially, like I feel like they also wrote it very well to where you could tell they weren't quite themselves either.
Yeah.
There was something off about them, like especially if you've been watching them and stuff. Like Sabine's obviously carrying some pretty hefty baggage.
Right.
Ahsoka's obviously not quite sure of what her leadership and how to do things, and so it's interesting to see them kind of like struggling with what they're supposed to be doing right now. I thought that was written really well.
Yeah, I agree too. And I do think it's interesting the dynamic between Ahsoka and Sabine, because a lot of this show we thought we would probably know a lot of what's going on as far as the backstory, right? Like we know about Thrawn, we know Rebels, but then they go in and throw that during this big time jump, Ahsoka was training Sabine and then they're not. And we know virtually nothing about it other than it didn't end well. So
apparently she has not a great connection to the Force. So
yeah, and I am a fan of that because as we had talked last week, that was your biggest complaint or thing you're not excited about was Sabine being Force sensitive. It sounds as if she's not very Force sensitive. So
No, and I think that could be pretty cool moving forward. That could be a lot of a sense of her frustration, right? If she wants to go find Ezra, like being a Jedi was like, well, that's it. Like I can become a Jedi and go find him, and then to find out, well, no, it's not really going to come that easy for you. But yeah, I just thrown it like some of the things that threw me off, like Ahsoka, like borderline manipulating Sabine.
Yeah,
she comes to him, she's like, hey, I found where Ezra is, right? Like, that's not really what Ahsoka's thinking about. She's like fully focused on Thrawn, but she knows what to say to Sabine to get her on. So, it's kind of a different Ahsoka, and it is. I don't know. It's interesting.
And that's what, even at the beginning when she's, is it Huyang? How do you say the droid's name?
I'm going to butcher it. So
yeah, so
yeah,
they're talking
yeah,
and she's like, I didn't learn this, I didn't use Jedi tactics or something along those lines.
yeah,
And then she establishes that she's very much not a Jedi. Like, she's got a goal and she's oriented towards that goal. And so she's going to do whatever it takes to find Thrawn. So that means she's going to get Sabine to try to find Ezra to get her to Thrawn,
yeah.
whatever it takes.
Which, interestingly enough, like I feel like she's doing some of the same things the council did to her, right? Like,
yeah.
Not fully trusting her. Like, hey, you're going to follow my orders because I said it, right? Like, she gets really upset because Sabine didn't follow orders, right?
Yeah.
That's who's Ahsoka to judge somebody for not following orders,
especially with Anakin being her master.
So it's an interesting thing to see her kind of falling into some of those same pits as the other Jedi who found themselves in kind of those positions of I'm the leader now, so I got to kind of carry the weight of stuff.
But, it's always good when you get the Jedi painted in a negative light, because Dave does understand the whole folly of the Jedi and how they fell and allowed Palpatine to happen. And so even seeing a little bit of that in Ahsoka here has been interesting, not trustworthy. And then it causes the apprentice to go off and be frustrated and turn into Darth Vader. That's how it goes. If you go to Rebels, Kanan has a lack of trust in Ezra on the episode where Maul blinds Kanan, right? So it almost pushes Ezra closer to Darth Maul, and it's just cyclical how it goes.
Which is cool. Gosh, time. This is a whole nother conversation for another time. But then, you see Ezra figure out what a Jedi is by watching Kanan be a Jedi, right? You could argue that Thrawn's defeated because of what he saw, what he learned how to be a Jedi from Kanan. So it's really cool. And so I'm hoping that we see some of that dynamic where Ahsoka kind of figures out, okay, maybe I'm not really being. I mean, I don't even know if I guess she doesn't really call herself a Jedi anymore, but figuring out how she's going to teach somebody else.
Yeah, one last thing on that master and apprentice thing. She's still growing, right? So the theme is a master and an apprentice, but she's still not technically a master. I'm not sure how they're going to flesh that out, but I think that's where we're going to get Anakin. I hate to compare this to the sequels and whatever, but Rey is looking for those voices, to guide her to beat Palpatine or whatever. Yeah. And the moment when she most needs it, all the Jedi are talking to her and bring her to what she needs to do. And so I think we're going to have not, forced voices or whatever, but I think we're going to get to an inflection point to where she needs something to push her to be that master. And I think that's where we get Anakin in this story.
I hope so.
Yeah, that would be a good way to do it too.
I agree.
Pushing her to the next spot. So I'm excited to see where it goes there. What else did you like?
Trying to pick out just one thing because again, I enjoyed all of it. Just a lot of the lore that was built into it. I mean, they didn't shy away from talking about some stuff that would probably confuse other people.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you catch the Purrgil?
I did.
Coming through the clouds.
So I did not.
What's the name of that planet? I can't remember. What it was.
I don't know the name of the planet. New one. So I did not catch it while we were watching it. But then Star Wars Sith, he has a short or a reel up. Tony put up something and it's like, hey, did you catch this? Because he missed it too. And so I just watched that. He sent us a message tonight with that. And I missed it until I saw that. So
it's just kind of the shape barely coming through the clouds there.
Yep. So, and I just love how all this Rebels knowledge is going to benefit us watching this.
Yeah. Well, that'll lead into something I didn't like.
Yeah. Okay.
But because with all the lore and stuff that they have in there, I feel like it could be used a little better to explain some things, specifically this magic star map. To me, it's like the show starts and it's like, I don't know. Ahsoka's been looking for Thrawn. Everybody's looking for Thrawn. And then the start of the show, it's like, oh, we'll just get the map that shows where he is. And so there's this map that's been sitting in this apparently Night Sister temple for however long that just happens to
know where Thrawn is.
It doesn't really tell you. So that bothered me a little bit because I'm like, well, how do they even know this thing leads to Thrawn? Why do they think it leads to Thrawn? Where's the explanation for this? So that annoyed me a little bit. Not enough to make me even not enjoy the show a little bit, but I mean, I guess they could still explain it.
Right. We're just now starting.
Kind of a wide open plot hole for me. So.
No, because we were texting, you and I were texting, and I had not even realized just how big of a plot hole that was. In episode 9, you have the Wayfinders, and it's like, man, this is a stupid idea. I can really dunk on episode 9 for a long time because I don't like it at all. The fact that it's like, oh, there's only 2 of these things, and it shows you exactly how to get to wherever, honestly almost makes more sense than some random star map that takes you to a random place and Thrawn just happens to be there. I'm sure they'll explain it, but it does seem weird.
Yeah, I don't even think it would be hard to explain. Like, I feel like you could explain it in like 5 minutes. Like, we looked for Thrawn in the unknown regions. Nobody found him. There's only one map we know of that points to another galaxy. So maybe that's where he is, right? Like,
yeah. What do they call it in movies? Is that the MacGuffin? Is that what they call it? Yeah. It's the MacGuffin. Well, there's always one.
You could bring in the Purrgil too, because like all the Wayfinders and stuff, like that came from like them studying the Purrgil.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Hyperspace technology came from the Purrgil. And so like they know that they travel certain routes. And so maybe somebody found that the Purrgil take this route that leads to another galaxy. And that's why we're seeing it come back to this planet, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's one of their routes they take. I feel like you could explain it, but they just chose not to.
I think it'll turn out okay. Another thing I like, and it may lead into like a thing I didn't like too, but there was a lot of lightsaber combat in just 90 minutes. I mean, the show starts off with Baylan and Shin just absolutely wrecking that New Republic ship. That was awesome. And then you go straight from there to Ahsoka fighting those droids. I want to say the next fight is Sabine with her lightsaber. Like, she fights Shin, and then you have Ahsoka fighting the Inquisitor. Like, that's at least 4 battles.
It was a lot.
Right there, and I'm probably missing something. I don't know, maybe not, but that was a lot of action. I liked Andor, but Andor was not exciting. I don't think the 3rd season of The Mandalorian was as exciting as previous seasons, so having a good bit of action in Star Wars with lightsabers, always a good thing.
Yeah, no, it definitely, it gives it that Star Wars feel, right? Like the big epic duels, and no, it was fun. It was, and they were really cool fights. Like, they were well choreographed. I wasn't a huge fan of the sequel lightsaber fights, but this was a good balance between like the over the top choreography of the prequels, right?
Yeah,
it was still fun to watch. I think it's a much more grounded, fun action sequence. So, and to talking about Sabine, I'm glad we can finally add to Star Wars canon that lightsabers are not fatal when you're stabbed with them.
So there's the thing I don't like. I don't want to rant too far on this, but it all starts.
It deserves some ranting.
It does. So we're gonna. I guess we're hopping around. So this is the thing I don't like.
Sorry, my brain does that.
No, you're good. So, and it made me so mad when it happened, because I assumed in that fight between Sabine and Shin, I thought she might get like a nick on the arm or something, like what happens to Obi-Wan in Episode 2, or I think that happens to Rey when they're fighting the Praetorian Guard. Like a little nick or something like that. But a full-blown, like, how many people had to get stabbed in the stomach and live before people start going, well, you know, hey, if you're going to do anything, stab me in the stomach with a lightsaber because I'll be fine. Like, that's ridiculous, in my opinion. That's
no, it was, because it does do something to the scene. Because, like, we're watching it, my wife's, like, shocked. She's like, oh, she's going to be all right. I'm like, she's fine.
Yeah, and it's like the boy who cried wolf. Right. Like, all right, so you have the Grand Inquisitor get stabbed and lives. And I mean, Reva stabbed him right through. So then you have like 6-year-old Reva survives Order 66 getting stabbed.
She gets double stabbed and survives.
That's a big load of crap that she survived Order 66. And then, like, I can almost look past that a 6-year-old survives Darth Vader killing you. And then he stabs her again, and not only does she live, she gets on a ship and goes and finds Luke Skywalker. She's fine enough to go on another adventure immediately.
Good. She's fine.
So then what do we have? At least Sabine had to go to the hospital for a week or something, but we got to quit doing that.
Yeah, we're stabbing a lot of people with lightsabers, and it's not doing much. So
Kylo Ren gets stabbed, but Rey force heals her. There's at least some explanation there, and I guess they used a lot of Bacta on Sabine, you know.
So I guess we could go back and say maybe Han Solo would have survived if he had not fallen off the bridge.
Yeah, it wasn't the stab that got him. It was certainly the plunge into the reactor. Qui-Gon, I don't know why he died. He must have just been a wuss. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. It's a little bit silly. I mean,
there's a lot of people get stabbed in Star Wars and die like that, and then all of a sudden, nope. All of a sudden you don't die anymore. So that's my biggest gripe. And the whole thing is that stupid stab scene. Like, you could have disarmed her another way. Cut her hand off. Give her a robot hand. I don't know.
Take a finger away. Yeah.
Yeah, something little. And then the other thing that I thought was it. I didn't dislike it, but the rock music seemed a little out of place for Star Wars, but also it fit in very well with Sabine. So that's not a real complaint. I just found that to be something that almost took me out of the Star Wars feel, if that makes sense.
It was jarring. Yeah. That was something I was like, oh, what's happening right now? I mean, yeah, like you said, it fit in with kind of her rebellious nature. She's running off. But yeah, it was definitely one of those moments where it does kind of make you stop and be like, oh, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, and I don't like being taken out of the world that we're in, right? So that was the big complaint with like Jack Black and Lizzo in The Mandalorian was it was like, oh, I know Jack Black. He's hilarious. He's in everything. And it took you out of Star Wars. Yeah. And like, I love Jack Black. Jack Black's one of my favorite comedians in the world, or comic actors, and him being in it, like I enjoyed it, but at the same time, it's like I'm just caught up on Jack Black, not on the story. And so the rock music to me almost took me out of the story, thinking like, did they have rock music in Star Wars? They do, apparently.
Yeah, they do now. Yeah.
But not a complaint, just a thought.
No, that's fair. I kind of felt the same way when it popped in.
So really, like, do you have another complaint?
Or, I have a question for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because I just thought about this, and I was curious what you thought about it. What do you think about this whole path to Peridea thing?
Okay, so that's the way that they're getting to Thrawn, right? Like it's the ancient path.
To my understanding, that came out of nowhere. Like I haven't heard that before.
I've never heard of it.
It sounds like new lore, and it just kind of came out of nowhere, like it was a thing. Like, oh yeah, another galaxy. That's the path to Peridea. Like, it was kind of weird the way that just kind of dropped without. I don't know. That was a little odd to me.
Yeah, so a couple initial thoughts. Yeah, so I did think about that as far as the map laid it out really nicely, like with the gold line in between the two. That was convenient. But I did think, well, if there's this whole other galaxy and apparently there's this legendary path or whatever it was called, are we going to get more galaxy exploring? Like, what else is going on? You know, so that was my initial thought is, there could be a full-blown another established galaxy and all these things happening there. So that was cool to me, I thought.
It's cool, but it also makes me worry a little bit. Like, is this going to be like a brief thing? We're like, hey, we're going to acknowledge another galaxy and then we're going to go back to telling stories here. Because I feel like you can't do that, right? Like, as soon as you introduce, like, hey, we're going to another galaxy, like, that's a big deal. Like, everything in Star Wars has been in
this galaxy.
And so, like, it's like you have a giant book of here's our lore. We're going to bring in this other giant book and read 2 sentences out of it and just kind of leave it there. It's gutsy. Like so it'll be interesting to see if they actually move forward with it or if it's just a blip in this show. Or
that's a good thought. That's true. And we're going to have to know what's there, right? Like we have to know more to have a big decision on it. But that's a good point.
I do think it's really cool. Like Morgan was talking about the ancient civilization that came from that galaxy that built that platform that obviously they somehow have ties to the Night Sisters, it seems like, because they seem familiar with them. Yeah. They had this whole temple built around their map. Like that's kind of an interesting connection. And I like that they're bringing them into it a little bit more, the Night Sisters, because they're a really interesting kind of group, have a very, very different connection with the Force.
Yeah.
Almost a very macabre, kind of creepy connection with it.
Yeah, and that's something we haven't seen yet is like scary Star Wars. So
it'll be interesting.
Yeah. How about her being a witch? That was cool.
I did like that. I think that was part of what elevated her because, initially she's just kind of this, I don't know,
warlord,
crazy imperial lady, warlord. Ahsoka beats her. She goes to prison.
Yeah.
She seems much more menacing now. And I do feel like that's a part of it. So
yeah, I liked that. And one of the trailers or something, someone pointed out that, hey, I think she's a Night Sister. And it turned out she was. And so, because maybe like her eye was green or something like that. I don't know. But either way, I like that because I didn't care for that episode in Mandalorian as far as like, I loved the Ahsoka parts, but then when they go and fight her, I'm just like, well, Ahsoka should whip her. Like it's just a woman with a Beskar spear.
I felt the same way at the time.
But now we know, like, okay, she's not just some woman with a spear. So that's like a sidebar, but Yeah, I like that she's bad. They got an Inquisitor. They've got two half Siths or whatever they are. Like, there's a lot of good going on. So that maybe we only had 3 complaints, and really only one of them, maybe or 2 were a complaint. The star map and then the stab wound. I think those are firmly complaints.
Yeah.
But with we probably skipped 30 positives for each of us just because of our time constraints. Like, it was so good. It felt like Star Wars, all the action, the lore thrown in. This is the first time for me that Star Wars has felt like Star Wars in a very long time. I don't know about you.
No, I felt the same. It felt like it felt like Star Wars between just the action, the characters, the banter, right?
Yeah.
Like all of it just feels very Star Wars, which is really cool. You get the feeling that this was a show that was really, well, we're going to try to make it accessible. We're going to try to bring people in, but we really want to make a show for people who have been keeping up with all the things that are really engaged with all these storylines. It's really committed to that, which is really fun. So
for sure. Yep. I think Mando season 1 felt very much like Star Wars. Yeah. Season 2 continued season 1. Season 3, not so much.
Yeah.
Andor at times feels a lot like Star Wars, but
it's just a very different.
Yeah. And the Book of Boba Fett at times does too. But at other times it's like, what's the point of the show? But this kind of brought me back to episode 7, right when episode 7 came out. That felt very much like Star Wars because it essentially ripped off episode 4. But
that's true.
This kind of gives me those same warm, fuzzy feelings like, man, this is really good. So I'm excited for it.
I am too.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to look forward to. I'm really invested in all the characters. I want to know more about the bad guys. Like, I want to know more about Baylan. Shin is a character who has said very little. All she's done is really fight. But I want to know kind of about what her background, like, what's her deal? Because she's a very broody. She's got some issues, it would seem.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm really curious to know about all these characters. Like, it's there's a lot. I hope they can wrap it all up.
Well, yeah, this is. So I was going to say, kind of moving into our last segment here, where do you think we're going? Because as far as wrapping this up, I don't want to just say, where do you think we're going the next episode? Because if we've watched The Mandalorian, we know sometimes the story plots can jump here and there. So the next episode may not be a direct continuation. But as far as the show goes, as a whole, where do you think we're going this season?
I think, and I kind of hope. So they got that Eye of Scion thing they're building, right? Which I'm assuming is going to make some sort of giant hyperspace tunnel or something. I think it would be cool if we see the villains successfully get through there. And then that's why we end up with Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds. Maybe that's her only way to connect to that place. Like, she has to go there to find a way to get to that galaxy. I feel like that could work. What I really want to see, though, is, and I don't know if we will, but I thought about this the other day, is I'd really like to see just an episode start with, like, flashback Thrawn and Ezra just coming out of hyperspace with the Purgles and all the chaos that consumes from that. That would be cool. But I don't know. Like, I hope they're going to go to this galaxy. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
And I could see that's where maybe the World Between Worlds come in if she's got to find a way to get there. So I don't know.
I like that. So honestly, we're a fourth of the way through. That's a big chunk.
Gosh, I know. It's crazy to think about it that
way. There's not as far as like moving forward, it's going to have to happen quickly. I feel like this next episode, they are going to go to whatever planet Baylan's on. Like they've got the little tracking thing that Chopper threw on there. So I think we'll figure that out and get there. But from there, is that where Baylan and Shin and the Inquisitor Merrick, is that where they jump and go on their little hunt, and then that leaves Ahsoka and everyone else trying to figure it out? I'm not sure how exactly they're going to go about this, though, because the New Republic has to get involved. We know from the trailers that happens.
That's true.
So something has to happen for Ahsoka and Hera to take it back to the New Republic. We still have Sabine is going to be doing her training. She's all in now. Ahsoka's called her Padawan or apprentice or whatever. So we're going to have that going on at the same time. And then Shin and Baylan, I think there's going to be a big focus on the two of them and how she grows at the same time. You still have to, like, we know Hayden's in the show, so you still have to somehow get him in there.
It's a lot.
Potentially the World Between Worlds. I'm not convinced we're getting it in this show. but there's a lot of good, like, reputable sources saying we are, and maybe you're right. Like, that's the only way she gets there. But I feel like the Purgle is going to be what takes them there. I feel like that's going to be kind of their callback, like, oh, the Purgle know how to get there. So there's just so much that has to happen, and we only have 6 more episodes for
and
it to happen.
The next one's like half an hour.
Yeah, it's a short one.
It's not even. Yeah, there's a lot. I feel like, again, and I have full faith that hopefully they'll be able to. I mean, the first 2 episodes were great. I think with the marketing stuff, it seems like they have a lot of confidence in the show. So
yeah,
I'm hoping they do. But man, you're right. There's a whole lot going on that it's going to be a lot to wrap up in 6 episodes. So
yeah, that leaves me with the idea that we're going to have one of those cliffhangers like this.
Yeah.
We talked about it some last week, but I don't think this is going to be a tie bow on it show. I think this is going to be like, because you remember Mandalorian season 1 happened, and then season 2 was like the next year. It was quick.
Yeah.
So I think this may turn into one of those, how much exactly did they film? I know there's a strike going on right now. Not sure the effect that'll have, but maybe as far as writing the story, just the heroes getting right up to where Thrawn is or something, that's where we end here. And season 2 explains more. That's my thinking, because there's so much going on.
Yeah, I was about to ask you how big of a cliffhanger you think this will be. Like, do you think it'll be like it's going to cliffhang like they just get to the galaxy and that's where it's going to drop off or something like that?
Yeah, maybe I'm still a firm believer, and I could be wrong in the next episode, but I'm a firm believer as far as Ahsoka, Sabine, Hera, them seeing Ezra. We're talking like that's the payoff at the very end. And
yeah, you might be right.
And I'll be happily proven wrong if we see, like you said, a clip of him and Thrawn in the next episode. Maybe we do see what's happening on their side of things. But as far as everyone reuniting, I think we may get a big cliffhanger there, similar to the episode 7 Luke at the very end. Because that was a good cliffhanger. Like, you want to talk about getting people talking for 2 or 3 years?
Oh, for sure.
That was the best time to be a Star Wars fan.
Huge cliffhanger, yeah.
Yeah, until it all happened. But yeah, so I don't think there's enough time for them to close this up.
Yeah, no, not in one season. Like that's definitely. I just don't know how far they're going to take it before they leave us in that state of desperation, wanting to know what happens next.
Yeah. But overall, big picture, as we're kind of closing it up here, I thought these 2 episodes were amazing. I would give both of them, if not a 10 out of 10, a 9 out of 10 for each episode. I thought they were great, engaging, good story, good characters, tons of action, felt like Star Wars. The complaints are like essentially non-withstanding. Like, they're not a big deal. I think this is going to be a very fun fall. Good time to be a Star Wars fan.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, I agree.
Any closing thoughts? Anything else? Are we content?
I mean, like we've said, I could pull things out and keep talking for a while, but I think we'll start to lose people at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So that's going to be it for us this week. This is episode 2 of the Force with Friends podcast. Next week, we will do this all again. We'll watch episode 3 on Tuesday night, and we will film this on Wednesday or Thursday, and you will have your episode at 9 a.m. on Friday. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you're enjoying this content. Hit the bell notification if you just really don't want to miss anything. Otherwise, thanks for joining us, and may the Force be with you.